The other terrible, rather frightening thing was that there was no penicillin. And a normal surgery of appendicectomy would have a sinus 3 inches deep with pus at the bottom. So they'd clean it as best they could, lie the patient on their tummy to drain it, and then we'd come along with, what was that lamp called? Chromia, with those long applicators, which were only effective at the end. And we'd hold these there for if it was 3 inches deep, we'd hold it for 3 minutes, and if it was 2 inches deep, we'd hold it for 2 minutes. And I never knew what good we did, but I wasn't surprised they got infected, because although the theatres were on the ground, they had to be because of air raids, they had these old-fashioned lifts, and you could see all the workings of it. You could see it going up and down with all its metal framing, and you had one of those doors which you clang, 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 and then another one that did the same, and if you didn't get it in properly, it just stood there. And they came up from the theatre in these lifts, which were covered in grease so that they would work well, and covered in dust on top of that. Then they went to the ward. So there was no penicillin, and the diet wasn't the best, and sometimes the people hadn't had they might have come back from being at the war or something. So it wasn't a surprise that they got these terrible infections, never heard of today, I hope. And then we also had a session with Alexander Fleming when he, with others, discovered penicillin, and the room wouldn't have been much bigger than a normal living room. And most of the time he said, oh, well, it was just luck. It wasn't just me. We just happened to suddenly notice it. So that was quite a historical moment. I probably didn't realize how much it was at the time. Was my brother-in-law was injured in the war, and it took 2 years for his tibia and fibula to join in plaster, and it oozed pus, and we used to have to burn incense because the smell was pretty strong. Eventually he kept his leg, which was amazing, 2.25 years in plasters. So, it was unky. It wasn't... at this time, Guy's Hospital had lots of little sub-hospitals out in the country where they could send forces who'd been injured. They didn't want them to be in London, so they sent them out to the country. So we went out there as well. But by the time I was training, the bombing of London really had pretty well stopped. It was just the V1s and V2s that were there. And there was an inevitable rugby between St Mary's and Guy's. That was very intense. Not so much with Bart's Hospital, not so much with King's. The Mary's and Guy's was very much the social life that you went to with the rugby matches. And I've been back there since to Guy's Hospital, and there's King's and Guy's seem to share, and a bit of St Mary's as well, I think. And it looks just as old-fashioned, and parts of it just as dirty. Quite sad, really. I was quite embarrassed to show my granddaughter from America, MIT, Harvard, and there was this really shoddy building that had produced and done so much for the world, but it didn't look anything very prepossessing. It was amazing. So I failed my first Aviva because I treated the right quadriceps with Faradism instead of the left, so they immediately failed me, which I thought was a bit silly because not many patients would say, oh, actually you treated the wrong one, but it just finished it. I did it perfectly done, wrong leg. So I failed. And I'm very glad I failed, because it was good for me. I hadn't failed an exam before. And I learned so much that next 6 months that I was horrified to think I might have got through and not known so much. I was really glad. And then I had a job in Kent and Sussex Hospital, in Tunbridge Wells, and then and I hadn't much respect for the person in charge she didn't seem to do much, and she got me onto a night clinic with him straight away, which with no sort of supervision much at all, and I ran this clinic 6:30 to 9 at night on my own. Very good for me, but she never treated patients much. She sat at a little desk and talked a lot, and I wasn't very impressed. I thought I wouldn't like that sort of administration. I don't think if that means being in charge of a department, that'll be for me. However, I learnt a lot, and it was interesting, and I seemed to get results and enjoyed it. And I had a lecture from the orthopedic surgeon there, and I never forgot these rather unmedical things. We would never have got the bad backs we have today if we had done away with chairs. Sitting on the floor would be much better, and later on in my life I had a staff from Thailand, and of course she sat on the floor and she said, "We do not know about hip troubles and arthritis and back troubles in Thailand." So I remembered, and I liked sitting on the floor anyway, so I carried on doing that. And then he said, "Never sit and rest if you can lie." And then he started to emphasize the effect gravity has on the body, and I've never forgotten what he said. And I think it was very wise. I've heeded it really all my life. And then I went up to London and was employed by the Middlesex Hospital, who'd taken over a Baptist tabernacle in London. I mean, war was over, but we were still feeling the effects. And they took over this Baptist tabernacle for treating arthritis and rheumatic patients so that they could come to London and work, but have treatment, because it was open from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. This was very well organised. We came on duty at 9, went off at 5, or you came on at 1 and went off at 9. And your rooms were all organised for you with your patients, and you spent time either in the room where they had electrical treatment, or you went into the pool where you, with patients in the pool, or you did special massages underwater. What was that called? Aches massages. That was, and I took a course there in hydrotherapy, and who should be taking the course with me but Eleanor Worsp. Eleanor Worsp was from New Zealand, and she was being trained for the spa that was opening up in Rotorua. I had no thoughts of coming to New Zealand or of leaving England at all then. She seemed to be older than us and very efficient. I was quite frightened of her in a way. She was very, just very efficient and informative, and somebody you would admire.